The FAA Knowledge Test, the big ugly speed bump between you and your private pilot's license. Some people like testing, others don't, like me. But despite that, I was still able to get myself a 97% on it. And here are 3 tips that I used beyond the usual studying that helped me ensure that I got myself a big fat score. The first big tip I can really give is to treat your answers as if they exist in the real world. Rote memorization is just not going to cut it if you really want to know the subject like the back of your hand. I'll give you a specific example of something I really drilled into my head, which is subjects of wake turbulence, because if you have followed the channel, and I'll link the video here, I have talked about getting hit by wake turbulence early in my training. I would get all kinds of questions whenever I took practice tests about like, oh, how do wingtip vortices form on the aircraft? And the answer is, outward, upward, and across the tip of the wing. When you see another aircraft land, at what point do you want to land in order to avoid the wake turbulence, which is, of course, you want to land beyond the point in which the aircraft landed, because wake turbulence only generates when the aircraft is developing lift. So you see how I'm able to kind of rattle these things off the top of my head? When it came to wake turbulence, I felt it in the real world. So if you want to study something like, for example, weight and balance, it really helps to either get caught in a bad situation, which I don't recommend, like with me and wake turbulence, or to pretend as if this were a life and death situation. Use the knowledge the way it's meant to be used, right? Which is in a real world situation where this could mean a good time or a bad time. The second big tip I can give is honestly just play the test game. The majority of you have gone through the unfortunate kerfuffle that is our public school system here in America. So you know that you've had to take test upon test upon test, where you fill in the blank of the multiple choice, and there's always trick questions, and la 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 la. There's a skill set on being able to pass those kind of tests, and the FAA Knowledge Test is exactly that. Use the techniques that you learned in school to get through those stupid things. Process of elimination. You can get rid of that answer, so now you have a 50-50 chance. Really read the questions, because sometimes they like to play tricks on you, because reasons I don't know and I don't like, but they'll play tricks on you. So read those things carefully. And of course, there's always that nice little thing where if you get a math question where you have to, for example, figure out weight and balance, and you're like, oh, golly bum, this number doesn't look like any of the other numbers, you can kind of think, is this number close enough to the numbers given? That one is close enough. And the final tip, and this is the one that saved my bacon on a very specific question, is look for the answers elsewhere in not only the test, but also the supplemental materials that they give you. There was a certain point where it was actually, funnily enough, toward the end of the test that I ran into a question that completely stumped me. What is the average vertical height above ground of Class Delta airspace? And I was just like, well, I have no idea. How am I going to find this? And then I realized, oh, they have the VFR charts in this booklet. So I started flipping through the booklet and looking for Delta airspace and doing the math. I looked at where they said the field elevation of the airport is, and then I looked at the upper bounds of the Delta airspace. I was able to look it up, and I looked at a bunch of Delta airspace, and I realized, they all seem to be the same number. And sure enough, I got that answer right. And the reason why I know I got it right is because when you finish, they immediately print out a little printy sheet that tells you your score, and also the Airman Certification Standard codes of the questions that you missed, so that your instructor can go over them. So I know for a fact that I got that answer correctly, because my codes were something about the pedostatic system and something else. So yes, it's not just about the book learning. It's about not only really knowing your knowledge, but also applying it smartly by either playing the test game or using the resources at hand to figure out a problem that presents itself towards you, which is a really great skill set to have as a pilot, by the way. If any of you were able to entirely ace your FAA Knowledge Test with like 100% or something, definitely leave a comment down below and give me that sweet engagement, and tell the other aviators at home your tips and tricks if you have any. So I hope all you out there can get through this test. I hate tests, so I'm glad it's behind me. Some of you may like tests because you're weirdos, but for those of you who don't, I hope these tips help you get to the fun part, which is actually flying the plane. So until then, deuces.